Welcome back to Beyond the Helmet. I'm your host, Steve McGrath, and before we jump into my conversation with Cris Dishman, let me give you a quick breakdown of Coach's resume. He's only been in football for 4 full decades as a player collegiately, then jumping into the NFL where he had a 13-year career. He's an all-pro, Pro Bowl cornerback, mostly with the Houston Oilers, but then takes a couple years out of playing, comes back as a coach, NFL Europe, collegiately with Baylor, defensive backs coach for the San Diego Chargers. Most recently, he was with the XFL, and now he's at IMG Academy. He's going to be coaching Florida football, the high school level coming up. He also operates Goat Skills. GoatSkills.com is where you can find a plethora of information about anything from sprinting, which was his calling card, and playing defensive back as well. So without any further ado now, give it up for Cris Dishman and his football story. Just sort of set the stage for you to do this, right? I mean, at this point, it's how many decades of being in football? Do you mind? So how does this start? Of course, we know it's Purdue. You know, you're there for football and track, but, you know, going back to when you were in high school, how did you first get into it? You know, did you always want to play football? How does this whole path begin?
I always wanted to play football. You know, I was growing up in Louisville, Kentucky. Coach, of course, Muhammad Ali was my hero. You know, my house is probably about 6 or 7 blocks from his house. Uh, so Muhammad Ali I wanted to box, of course, because he was a boxer, but I also wanted to play football. His brother played football, basketball, and baseball. I tried the baseball thing, and it just wasn't me. So I played football, basketball, and ran track. Um, I've always been in love with the game of football, and I always told myself I wanted to play professional. Growing up in Louisville, you had pretty much, I was a Bengals or a Browns fan, you know, because it was closer to Louisville. Then as I got older, I became a Raiders fan, all because of Lester Hayes and Mike Haynes. I became, excuse me, I became a Raiders fan, and then, you know, I got into college, was able to get a scholarship to Purdue. God blessed me to get a scholarship to Purdue, play those years there, and I was fortunate to meet a guy you may know that played with the Steelers named Rod Woodson. Uh, my first year at Purdue, I was end up getting redshirted. So if you know what redshirt is, that you can practice but can't play. Okay. Then I came in at Purdue as a receiver. Then they switched me to defensive back. So now I'm playing a position I hardly ever know. I'm not playing at all. And I was fortunate to sit at a seat by a guy named Rod Woodson. He reached over and touched me on my shoulder. He said, "Man, I know you never played this position, but you'll be okay. I got you. I played this along. I know how to play it." So there we were, 2 peas in a pod. You know, when he go off to the games, I go off and work out. You know, when he come back to the games, I go work out. You know, that was my motivation of not traveling with the team. Couldn't even be on the sideline after the games. I used to go work out because I wasn't playing. You know, I'm on the sideline. Sometimes I had to sit in the stands. So that year that I was redshirted, that was my motivation to never be on the sidelines again. And that was one of my quotes: never be on the sidelines again. Always be in the game.
That's awesome. So is it really, do you credit Rod Woodson then to sort of getting you, like, actually learning the position and helping you get in a position where you can succeed and actually play, you know, defensive back at a high level from, you know, the second you start to learn it?
I credit Rod. I credit the style of defense that we played. Coach Leon Burnett was the head coach. And we played bump and run. We played bump and run coverage. You get that guy on the right, I get this guy on the left, and let's just play. And I was very fortunate to get drafted by the Houston Oilers in the 5th round by Jerry Glanville, because it's the same style of defense they played, was bump and run. Rod Perry and Pat Thomas, they the one really showed me how to backpedal. you know, because with Coach Saban, we played bump and run. If I had to go to a team that had to play off coverage, back pedal, I don't think I would have survived. I was blessed to be uh, drafted by a team who played the same style defense I played there at college. So when I got to the Oilers, I'm like, oh, this is great. I just have to cover the guy in front of me, you know?
And that can't be an accident. They have to have looked at you and saw a guy that fits their scheme. I'm sure they're like, yes, that is what we're doing. We need to get this guy here. I mean, did they? It makes sense, right? You draft the players to fit your scheme.
You do. And years later, speaking with Coach Glanville, he still teased me about that today, that um, they was looking at somebody else on film, and I kept showing up, and I kept showing up. And he's like, oh, we don't want this guy. We want this guy over here. Who's this 19? He keeps showing up on film. So he teased me about this today, you know. And Coach Glanville has been a very good mentor to me as far as coaching. But you know, like I said, I've been blessed, and I can't just thank God every day that I run into the likes of a Coach Phil Bennett in college, my last year there. You know, have really been hard on me, not just physically, mentally. You know, not just hard because of he want to be hard. He's been loving hard, and there's a difference between someone's just jumping you to be jumping you, but someone loving jumping you, telling you the truth, telling you that hey, you can make a lot of you can do some things for your family that you never thought you can do if you just buckle up and listen. Listen to me because I know what it takes. So I had Coach Bennett. Then getting drafted by the Oilers, I'm having Coach Saban, who has constantly been hard on me, you know, telling me that there's no way he should expect more of me than I expect of myself. Giving me the liberty to make mistakes, but also being there to hard correct my mistakes and let me know that playing defensive back, you know, it's an honor, it's a privilege. But if you make one mistake, you can cost your team the game. It's not like any other position on defense where you can cover it up. But playing back there in the back end, you can't make no mistakes. And they just had a loving, hard attitude that they gave me that said, you got to get it done. There's no excuses, you know. Then after Coach Saban left, coming in with Rod Perry, who Rod and Pat both played with the Rams, you know, right and left corner. So it's just, I've just been very blessed. I could name so many people who has helped me over the career. When I got older, there was Ron Zook there. You know, it was this different play than playing with D Green. I had a chance to play with a Hall of Famer, Darryl Green, like that, and he showed me different techniques that he used. You know, we was two style different corners. You know, I'm more physical at the line. He was a more corner that used his feet. So he showed me footwork drills that can help me out, help my game out. You know, so I just learned a lot from different people and tried to mold that into what I think will fit my style, and just went out there and played the best 13 years I could, and with God's help, and every morning waking up now and steady coaching, and every morning I wake up, I thank God for waking me up for another day that I can be a positive influence on someone's life.
Absolutely. And there's so much to what you just said, but if we jump into Coach Saban, did you see from, and this is of course back in '88, what was he doing that would allow him to become, a titan of college football coaching? Everything he's been able to accomplish. What did you see in him as a coach, and how has he impacted you as a coach? What have you taken from him as you've matured and become a coach in your own right?
The little things are the big things. Coach Saban was very, very detailed individual. He was detailed in his individual drills, and some of his drills that he taught me back then, I'm still doing them today. He was very detailed, very time oriented in his drills. We're gonna spend 3 minutes here, 4 minutes here, 5 minutes here, boom, 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 and it was like clockwork. Just going down, getting your drills organized, high energy in your drills. Um, you could tell that back then that he was going to be a heck of a coach, a very thorough coach. He was very detailed, and he didn't let that little mistake to creep in. He always was correcting that. He was like, but it didn't affect the play then. But he said, yeah, it did not affect the play then, but if I let it go, you're going to continuously do it, and it's going to affect the play later on. So he had a keen eye of knowing what you did wrong at that instant, and to be able to have some type of drill to correct what you did wrong. So it was just like I said, God has blessed me to be those first 2 years with him because he was such a solid foundation-based defensive back coach.
And of course, when you get to Houston, it's the house of pain, right? I mean, your style, everything fits into what that mystique was in Houston at that time. But just a couple years later, it's the end of that era, and this guy named Warren Moon really kind of steals the show. Do you care at all as a player if the way that your team is looked at goes from defensive first to offense? Because what he's able to do with the run and shoot offense, is it steals the show. Do you care at all as a player when you're on defense that now teams are more worried about the other side of the ball?
Not one bit. The main thing in professional football, if I could, is to win. It's not who have the it's not who have the biggest hat. It's who have to win. No matter if it's offense, defense, or special teams, we're a team. And the main thing is not if the offense not doing good one day, you need the defense and the special teams to carry it, and vice versa. If the defense not doing so good, the offense and the special teams got to carry it. So me personally, I didn't care whose show it was, as long as the show keep rolling and keep winning.
Fair enough. So many different Pro Bowl receivers come in because that offense is just so prolific. How tough did practices get in the early 90s when all these guys that are putting up numbers, I'm sure they're really working you through the week?
Practice got very, very competitive. Fighting with Haywood Jeffries, pushing Drew Hill, Ernest Givens and I getting in custom matches. So we got very competitive because they was very competitive. They was very good. Curtis Duncan, pointing his finger, and we pointing fingers at each other. So practice was actually made you better. Because if you can cover any one of those guys at practice, you can cover any of those guys out there that you play with on Sunday. Because you face those guys in practice at least 3 times a week. And during training camp, it's 4 times a week. So if you can face them and get victories on them, that you're going to get victories on Sunday by the guys you face. Because some of the best receivers are right here in your own backyard.
Yeah, and iron sharpens iron. So you become a Pro Bowl player with going up against guys like that every day.
And that's what I said, that it was so competitive that we was always at each other. What we did was leave it on the field, though. Arguing and fighting and cursing at each other and stuff like that and being very competitive, we left it on the field. We never brought it into the locker room. We respect the boundaries of the locker room, that what's on the field is on the field, what's in the locker room is in the locker room.
And that has to be key for you guys to, not want to tear each other apart off the field, to be able to be competitive when it counts and teammates when it counts.
It was. And like I said, we had some strong leadership. Bruce Matthews, Mike Munchak, Dean Steinkooler, our offensive line was good. We had a who's who in the backfield. And we only ran a one-back backfield. We had Mike Rozier, Alan Pinkett, Alonzo Highsmith, Gary Brown. So we had Lorenzo White, who came into my class. We had a one-back backfield, and we had 4 or 5 backs who could have went to any team and started and got over 100 yards a game easily and been a future back. So we had a one-back offense, was pretty much of a run and shoot style offense, and they was rotating these backs in. Yeah.
And Cris, I just wanted to jump to 96, your last year there, referring to Houston, of course. You're nearly a decade in Houston, where I just want to talk about the business side of the game, because you're playing well and everything is well on the field, but they franchise tag you. You know that they're going to be moving to Nashville. I mean, the year before, right, things don't go so well. The coach gets fired. How when you think about your time with the Oilers and how it ends, I mean, how did 96 play out? Because I'm sure it had to have left kind of a sour taste in your mouth.
It did because, as you said, that's when I first realized that this sport that I love and cherish the most, this sport that since I was 7, 8 years old, wanted to play, that it's really a business. It's not really a sport. And learning of that for the first time, being that old, and realize that this is a business, that I have to look at it as a business now and not a sport. Even though I love this sport and people call this a sport, it really shouldn't be called a sport because it's a business. And a lot of decisions are made as far as business-wise. And what happened there in Houston, how can you have one of the largest cities in the United States who high school football is king to go 5 years without football? That's just totally unreal. And to move from a place like Houston to, and no knock on Nashville, and I hope this don't go off wrong, but move from Houston to Nashville is totally different. You know, the people love you blue. They loved us. It was just always a great fan base. And then for to announce that we're leaving the year before, it was just like going into a stadium with crickets, you know. Matter of fact, it's like these guys now playing playing a game with no fans. That's I did that before in '96, going into a 60,000 stadium. There's only 12,000 people there, so I actually know what it's like to play in a stadium with no fans. If you look back at that year, that's why our road record was better than our home record. We won more games on the road than we did at home. And that's because of the fans, you know. Our team was built on energy, you know. We needed energy. We go into a stadium, we walk into our stadium pregame, it probably be only 5,000 people there. By the time the game starts, then you probably have another 6,000 or 7,000 people come, you know. So it was very hard to get yourself motivated. And I know a lot of people said, you guys was making money. You should motivate yourself. Yeah, that's true. We were making money, but it still was hard to get yourself motivated. You had to really dig deep in your soul. And I played a lot of music to get myself motivated, you know. I probably played In the Air at Night by Phil Collins probably about 50 times before I start, before I get out there to get myself pumped up and ready to go. But it's, you know, it was very tough. So, but it became the business part of it. Unfortunate that the mayor of the city and Mr. Adams didn't really see eye to eye with each other. And it was unfortunate that we as players had to be caught in the crosswind because the players didn't want to leave. You could ask every player on that team right now, that's today, we didn't want to leave. You know, the Houston Oilers belong with the Houston Oilers and belong in Houston, not in Nashville.
And it's like, of course that they should. So I can imagine it was very tough for a lot of guys on the team back then. And I mean, I feel like we could do an entire, series of podcasts just on that. But in the interest of time, I just wanted to jump to the last part of your career because you play, of course, another 4 years, but it's 2 in Washington. You jump to Kansas City, you jump to Minnesota. At that point, 3 teams in 4 years, different coaches, different players. You have to move. I don't know if you're moving a family with you. It's a whirlwind for anyone to handle, to move across the country, learn everything. How did you embrace that? Because, of course, you're a Pro Bowler in Washington, and maybe it's because Darryl Green was showing you some trade secrets. But, how do you just deal with being successful with an ever-changing environment?
Well, that's just my faith in God and realize that everything happened for a reason. Like you said, 3 teams in 4 years was tough on my family, but they knew that it had to be done. I thought when I first got signed by the Oilers, I thought I was going to be there my whole career. I would love to have been in Houston for 13 years and played in Houston for 13 years. That was my ultimate dream. But sometimes your ultimate dream have sometimes your ultimate dream sometimes stop, and you have to dream another dream. And so that's what I did. I dreamed another dream by going and playing in Washington for 2 years and meeting a guy like Darrell Green and meeting Brian Mitchell and those guys, and having a good relationship with Coach Turner, Norv Turner, and meeting a heck of a defensive back coach there, Tom Hayes, who coached at Kansas State for a while. So it's like God is telling me that this is move on, and that's what I did. I moved on from Washington, Kansas City to Minnesota my last year in 2000, and it was time. I was when I retired, I was happy that I retired. I wasn't 2 or 3 years later talking, oh, I can get back in shape. No, I ain't trying to get back in shape. Not one bit. I spent 13 years, and every year around about um, March the 15th, I went out to San Diego and trained with a guy named Ron Shetfield at San Diego State from March the 15th, April, after the draft, to come into May the 10th. I come back into Houston after we have before our mini camps and all that. I just spent 2.5 months, almost 3 months out there with Coach Shetfield and trained. And it was some of the best shape of my life out there training with him. Speed work, conditioning. He worked the mental conditioning and also physical conditioning.
Yeah. And that's what you have to do to be a Pro Bowl player. Put in that extra time, the extra effort, go beyond what the normal player will do.
You have to. And this word is used so much. Everyone, you ask these players today, what do you want to do? I want to be the greatest. Well, how do you become the greatest? How did Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, those guys, LeBron, what they do become the greatest? Tiger Woods, what do they do become the greatest? They don't, when the practice is over at, say, 4 o'clock, they're not in their car at 4:30 and leaving. They put in that extra work. So if you want to put it, everyone say, I want to be the greatest. What have you done before practice? What have you done during practice? And what have you done after practice?
Absolutely. But before we jump into your coaching days, though, it's year 13. You're a little long in the tooth, but Randy Moss and Cris Carter in practice. How much did having Randy Moss to go up against your last year there keep you playing at a high level? Because, he goes down, of course, as being an all-time freak of nature of a receiver.
Oh, going against them was lovely because that's what kept your motivation spirit. Randy was always talking, yapping at lunch. Yo, I'm going to do this. I'm like, no, you're not. So we had some good battles at practice. So the same thing with Cris. We had some real good battles in practice. So that was the motivation I need. As a player, you try to find something to motivate you every year. If it was unfortunate, a loss of a child, or a loss of a parent, or someone saying what you can't do to prove that person that you can do, or just you have to find some little niche that can get you over that hump to get you angry. And that's why I played angry, because a long time ago, someone told me that, oh, well, I will be coming to visit you in jail, or I'll be coming to visit you here. And I still remember that. And that anger throughout the years have helped me keep growing and keep mentally doing it. And by now, I should be over that anger, but I'm not. I'm keep driving, not just to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right.
Definitely. And so you have to flip that switch of no longer being a player, but keep that same drive as a coach. How did you always know that you wanted to jump into coaching, or did you take a couple years to reassess?
No, this is the great. I'm a trick of all trades. Okay, my first 3 years, I didn't have the patience to coach. You know, I followed the rodeo circuit. My first 3 years, I did cutting horses. Cutting horses. I rode cutting horses, owned some cutting horses, and a friend of mine at D Talk Ranch, Donnie, him and I went around to the local rodeos and did burros and cutting horses and stuff like that. And then after I did that for 3 years, and which I didn't win a lot of money, but I won enough to have my horses feed and hay and stuff like that. And I was approached by Alonzo Highsmith to train some guys. So I started training guys, and that's got me the coaching bug. I called Charlotte Castley, who was with the first GM of the Texans. I called him, and I told him that I want to get into coaching. So he suggests that I go to NFL Europe first and coach there to see if that's what I really want to do. So my first job was NFL Europe, Berlin Thunder, and I was a DB coach. I just fell in love with it right then and there. Coach Tom Sula was the defensive coordinator, and Rick Lance was the head coach. And me and Coach Tom Sula used to be down there at the Marriott Hotel in the basement and drawing cards and talking football and talking schemes. And I just fell in love with coaching right then and there. And I told myself, I don't care where I get a job at in the States when I come back, I'm getting a coaching job. I want to coach.
So you get a chance to then go from NFL Europe, you coach in college, you coach in the NFL, you coach in the XFL, you coach, of course, at Baylor, stop in the CFL. Man, everything under the sun. So what are the differences when you see the different levels of play? I mean, outside of high school, do you notice from one league to the next what really requires more attention or more emphasis? What are the nuances between the different leagues?
The difference in the leagues, of course, is the details that every player put on. Is the details that in the NFL you can see. Every player want to be great, but not every player want to work to be great. And that's the conversation we had before for the greatness. You got to work to be that way. You got to be able to get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock and go and watch film or come and work out before practice. You got to be able to practice. Got to be able to watch film after practice. So it's, of course, the talent level, is different, but it's still one drive. Everyone want to be the best. It's still one motive. Everyone who is in the XFL, the CFL, everybody want to play in the NFL. That's what I'm saying? You can't say, I just want to play in the CFL or I just want to be an XFL player. That's not true. Your goal is to get into the NFL and play in the NFL. It's where not only the money, that's where the best players are. Your best players, and as a competitor, you always want to play against the best player. You always want to be considered one of the best. Now today, now they have these top 100 or top 75 players or the top 100 players. I bet you every player in the NFL know exactly which number he is right now, because if they had that back then, I would definitely know exactly which number I was. And don't let me one year be 50, then the next year be 53, 55. That's just motivation.
Of course. It, like you said earlier, it's all about finding that motivation. So, if it's just that slight of, people don't think I'm as good as I was the year before, that's enough of a reason for a player to get that in their head and be able to play angry and get that edge.
Right. And I remember my first Pro Bowl I made, and God rest his soul right now, Mike Holloway. I wanted to go in and negotiate my deal, a long-term deal. And Mike Holloway told me that, that they're not going to try to do a one. It's going to be a 2-year deal. And I wanted this big 4-year deal. And they said, no, it's going to be 2 at best. He said, because you only made 1 Pro Bowl. And I was like, that was the fire I need for the next years to show him that I can make multiple Pro Bowls. I can make more than just one Pro Bowl. So it's just little stuff like that I like to pick up on and feed my inner self, you know. And you have to feed your inner self, no matter what. If you're not in football, no matter what sport, you have to feed your inner self. You have to feed your inner competitiveness in yourself. And I picked on every little niche to feed my inner self, to be able to drive myself to be the best, to go out in San Diego and run, to go out and run hills, to watch more film, and to try to watch the film of how Jerry Rice released. How's his release different than Michael Irvin? How is Andre Reed when he shake to the left, that how his shake is different than everybody else's shake? You know, so I studied those guys, and I had notes and upon notes and upon notes on every receiver I played against. So therefore, when I came back and play them, I reread my notes and go out and try to look at them now totally different, because I know exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah, that level of preparation. So I actually wanted to just jump back to your time at Minnesota. You know, Emmitt Thomas, I believe, is a coach at the time there, and
Yes.
he's a Hall of Fame player who, of course, transitioned into being a very successful coach. You know, how much did you take from him? And then as you became a coach, how much did his style influence you? And maybe just generally, of course, you're going to do it your way, but who would you say was the biggest influence that really pressed upon you?
I say Emmitt, because Emmitt he was stern but laid back, you know, and he tried to put, you know, he'll have a life lesson, but yet still he tried to teach football, you know. So Emmitt was very smooth with his delivery. He's delivered something like, for instance, if I don't break hard on a route, you know, he'd be like, you know, you really didn't break, you know, you broke okay, but you think you can break a little bit harder than that? He'd turn around and ask you, what could you done? You'd be like, yeah, I could have broke harder. Yeah, I think so too. So, you know, you possibly can get that interception if you'd have done what? Broke harder? Yeah, that's what you need to do, break harder. You know what I'm saying? He let you, even though he know the answer, he asked a question in a way that you should know the answer, that you have to say the answer out loud. So it was very good to have Emmitt my last couple of years. I mean, my last year there at Minnesota, because he knew I was a veteran player. He knew I was some things. He knew that I was in my way. I had to do it this way. And he just let me do it that way. And some things, he knew that if he wanted something, he knew how to word it to get me to do it the way he wanted it.
Yeah, when you're dealing with a 13-year vet, you got to understand that there's going to be some stuff you can't break there, but it's the nuance of coaching where you have to understand who you're dealing with, their personality, and it seems like he was able to navigate that pretty well, and obviously it's something I'm sure you take with you.
Yeah, he did. It's just like you know, he was a very smooth coach. You know, not too much yelling, not too much cursing. He was a guy that just show you the way. He want to show you the right way, and hey, try it this way. You don't like it, go back to your way.
Now, most recently, you were with the XFL coaching for the New York Guardians, but in the time since then, because that's just a few months ago, you're now going to be coaching at IMG down in Florida. So I just wanted to bring this to where we are today. Obviously, you're still very much a coach. It seems like you are a lifer. How much do you have to change your mindset going from NFL, Baylor, XFL to high school? I'm sure in some ways you have to dial it back a little bit because of the skill set of your players. They're 17, 18-year-old kids. How do you have to change your style in order to fit just younger men?
Well, Steve, to tell you the truth, I haven't. You know, I can't really scream and yell at them as much as I do the older guys. But some of these high school guys is tougher than my older guys, you know. So it's because those guys, All those guys want to go to the next level. They don't know nothing else but the next level. They want to go to college. They want to play in the pros. They want to play in the NFL. So I really take my NFL experience and try to show them this is what you have to do to get to NFL. You just can't wake up in the morning out of bed and say, I'm going to NFL. You have to put in the work before you can get there. And that's what's been very helpful, that I played so long for 13 years. None of these guys was born when I was playing. Of course, all of them, Google and YouTube and all that's out now, so they can go back and look, you know. Like one of the guys told me today, he said, Coach, you was pretty decent. Yeah, I said, I was all right. You know, I don't, okay, you know. But I try not to always tell them when I played, because my days are over. It's about them now. It's about what I can give you now. It's not about what I did. It's what you can do.
Yeah. And I know you care a lot about sculpting these kids beyond the football field. So how do you walk that line of giving them good life advice and pushing them in the right direction to mature and be good men off the field while also being a good football coach?
Well, I'm 55 years old. I'll be turning 55 this in August coming up. So I've made some mistakes in my life. And what I try to do is use my mistakes that I made and tell them, here's the mistakes I made. You don't have to make the mistakes because I already made them for you. You know, as a parent, you know, same thing. I talk to them like I talk to my kids, that my mistakes is my mistakes, but my mistakes don't have to be yours. That if my mistakes can help you to not make a mistake, then use it. You know, tell them the difference of right and wrong. Tell them to be conscious of what they're doing. Be conscious of what you put in your body. You know, of being, if you know what is right and wrong, and you see somebody doing wrong, then you do right. In order to be a leader, sometimes leaders are lonely. I tell them sometimes you may not be invited to the party. You may not be invited to the get together. It's okay to miss the get together. It's okay to miss the party, especially when someone's doing something wrong. So leaders got to be able to stand alone, you know, and stand there and lead, you know, and not just follow for being a leader, but a good leader. Not lead someone down the wrong path. Lead someone down the righteous path that you want to be on and that you should be on, and you know that what is right. Because everyone said, I didn't know what's right and wrong. Yeah, that's crazy. Everybody knows what's right and wrong.
And doing the right thing can be the unpopular thing.
It will be. If you're around a crowd of people, if you're around 10 people, it's not everybody going to be on the same page. Unfortunate. But if 8 or 9 of that 10 is on that right path, then that one person is not going to go outside the bounds and do something crazy, because he is going to fall in line with everybody else. So as a coach, you know you need to have the majority of your players doing the right thing. As a coach, we could be naive and say, oh man, all our players do the right thing. That's not true. We're not around them 24 hours a day, so we cannot see them if they do the right thing. You know, we're dealing with young men. Young men make mistakes, as we did when we got old. So as coaches, we have to realize that we just have to mold them and teach them and ask of them to do what is right each and every minute of the day. So therefore, their lives don't have to be as hard as what we did.
Definitely. And Coach, I wanted to just also talk about GOAT skills. You know, you've been coaching for different entities, but it hasn't stopped you from being able to produce your own content that's specific to whether it's speed or defensive back training. So goatskills.com is your website where you've worked to put stuff together for any young student athlete to be able to improve their game.
Yeah, I put some conditioning work, and my conditioning and speed and all that. It's just for any sport. It don't have to be just for football. Any
Right.
sport you want, any type of conditioning, there's a swimming workout on there, there's speed workout on there, there's conditioning workout on there. Of course, there's defensive back drills, and we're gonna keep involving this for the next year. They're gonna have DB drills, O line. We're gonna have every position is gonna have some type of drills that will cater towards their position as far as GOAT skills. So that's what we're in the process of working on now. That every position will have something catered to them. And then if years to come down, we're going to have basketball and soccer and baseball, and we're going to try to grow this thing, into something special. And we want guys like a Rod Woodson and Darrell Green and Deion Sanders. We want passionate guys that if they have a program that's very passionate about their program, we want them to put it on there too. It's all about giving back. It's all about, because we're getting older, I don't want to die with the knowledge I have in my head. I'd rather give it to someone who's going to use it when I die. Because death is happening. You're going to die. Eventually, everybody was going to die. So I realized that. So I want to be able to give what I have in my head to someone else, and hopefully they can use it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Isn't that what football has always been, though? From the time that you're a rookie, or maybe it's just Rod Woodson. You get there's always the older guys that help the younger guys come along. That's what life is always helping the next generation, telling them, what made you successful. So I think what you're doing is awesome. It's something that there should definitely be more of. And I am looking forward to watching it grow.
It is. And it's like, you have to help your neighbor. You have to help someone else. It's like if you're sitting in with $20 in your pocket and you see someone, don't give them, they may go do something with it. Once you give it to them, it's their money. So whatever they do with it is what they do with it. God see where your heart's at. And it's just like you helping someone under you do something where, like, when rookies was coming in, when the Oilers, I'm sorry for stuttering, the Oilers drafted Steve Jackson, Mike Dumas, Darrell Lewis, and Marcus Robinson. The year that I was holding out, they drafted those four, second round, third round, fourth round. They drafted 4 defensive backs the year I was holding out, trying to send a message to me. I didn't go into camp angry. I went into camp like, hey, man, let me help you guys. Let me show you this. All of us to this day are the best of friends, because they realized that I didn't have no attitude on my shoulder. I'm going to show you what someone else showed me. And that's because if the better you are, the better the team is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Putting brotherhood first over an individual goal.
Right. And that's what I love about playing in the NFL. I love about playing in college, that the team camaraderie. That's why I don't think I can ever get out of coaching, because the team camaraderie is there. No matter if it's football, basketball, but whatever. It's just the team camaraderie. It's not just the locker room. It's calling someone on the weekend, or calling your old friend that you shared stories with. Of course, the stories have embellished at this time, but the stories are there.
Definitely. Absolutely. So go, Chris, as we get to the end here, I wanted to did I hit everything that you had going on?
Yes, we did. If you can just tell people to go to Safebeatorg. I think is another organization that I'm involved with. The organization is a very good organization. It's helping young children to get scanned for any type of heart problems they have, high school students. So he do a great job. If you can go to safebeat.org, read up on it. It's what we're trying to push out right now. That's probably one of the GOAT skills things that we're trying to push out at safebeat.org, trying to get it out there, get people to realize that to go get checkups and stuff like that with the heart condition. And because you got so many high school players dying and don't have to be.
Yeah, that feels like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Well, Cris, in closing, I just have this little thing called the gauntlet, just a couple quick hitter questions I'd like to get your knee-jerk answer on.
Gotcha.
What's most important, number one offense or number one defense?
Number one defense.
Toughest wide receiver you had to line up against?
Wow. Can I put it in a package of three? No. My toughest wide receivers, I have to say, was Tim Brown, even though Tim didn't run that fast. It was Tim Brown and Michael Irvin and Chris Carter, who I played against and also went up against in practice because they were so strong and so be able to push. Jerry Rice, of course, is the ultimate competitor, but people don't realize that Jim Taylor was a hell of a receiver on the opposite side of Jerry Rice. He don't get as much credit as Jerry, but he was very hard to cover. So I would say it had to be either Jim Taylor or Mike Irvin.
13 years in the league, I think you're allowed as many as 13 answers to that question. So 4 is fine. Now, what's most important? Is it the players or is it the scheme?
They always say it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmy and the Joes. The players always going to be a player's game. There's so much schemes you can do. You can have this big, elaborate scheme. Oh, that's beautiful. Because as a coach, I have had some elaborate schemes. Oh, yeah, that's going to work. Then get out to practice, we're like, that didn't work that good because I didn't have the players to do it. So it's all about the guys you have. It's all about the guys believing in your scheme. It's about the guys believing in that scheme. It's about the guys who have the confidence that they walking on this field, no matter if it's offense and defense, that they're the best thing since sliced bread, and they're going to get it done no matter what.
Got it. And lastly, Cris, given everything you've been able to accomplish in like going on 5 decades of being in football, what's the best piece of advice that you would give to a young student athlete that wants to have anything close to the career trajectory that you've gone through?
My best advice I can give, as I've been saying it throughout the cast, is work. Don't be afraid to work. Don't be afraid to miss something all because you don't want to go work out. Put down your PlayStations, your PS4s, put down your TikTok videos, put down your Instagram, your Snapchat. Put all that down and go outside and do drills. Master your craft. I always tell guys, go master your craft. So whatever position, no matter if it's soccer, baseball, if you're a point guard in basketball, go out and shoot shots, go out and shoot dribbles, go out and shoot free throws. If you're a quarterback, work on your drops. Receiver, go out and get someone to throw the ball to you. So go out and master your craft. Wherever your craft is, go out and master it. Go out and run drills. Go out and do drills.
There it is. From someone that's walked the walk for a long time as both a player and a coach. Coach Cris Dishman, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, man. Let's do it again sometime.